So starting off, I wanted to do weekly devlogs. And then I saw it wasn't going to work, and I said, okay, bi-weekly. And now we're here, aren't we? So stuff gets in the way, and making a game really isn't easy. Combined with a part-time job and adult responsibilities, it leaves little time to turn on camera and rant about random spreadsheets, history, and so forth. So I do apologize, but every afternoon till now where I thought it'd be a good time to work on a devlog, I also thought it'd be a good time to work on the game itself. And so yeah, I did. Reworked menus, items, shop, save system, cleaner code, fixed bugs, styles with different effects, level ups. So I've been programming a bit. Honestly, I need this. After spending 2 weeks doing all the boring stuff, writing, planning, overcoming my greatest fears, I was thrilled to delve back into some good old programming interesting mechanics, programming gameplay, physics, cool stuff, enemy behavior, complex relationship systems. You've got to be fucking kidding me. Okay, so the thing about RPGs is that they have a lot of shit. Party members, items, classes, and those need menus. A lot of menus to each other, menus that communicate with each other, menus with inventories with inventories that communicate with other menus with inventories inside. And to make things worse, I looked at the code for the menus I had written a year ago, and I puked. So everything's like usual. It wasn't terrible at all. In fact, I remember this afternoon I spent last summer hyperfixating on doing this very simple thing, but I really wanted to do it myself. I wanted to make this scrollable menu system where you have a grid container with a scroll container, and it could be controlled with the up or down arrows. But the tricky thing is that it would only scroll downwards when at the last currently visible option, and upwards when at the first currently visible option. And eventually it would loop around. This simple logic took me the entire afternoon because I basically refused to look up anything on the internet or used any AI at all because I am better than that. So trusted me with my pen and paper, I sought to test my skills against this worthwhile opponent. This system prevailed, which I use a lot in a lot of menus in the game. So yeah, but the only inconvenience with this was that you had to calculate yourself the scroll amount necessary and the offset of the cursor to be to the center of the option, which were things that now in retrospective I immediately figured out how to automatize, so you wouldn't have to hard code that for every menu in the game. So that was cool. Additionally, I remember I developed this script after I'd already done some of the menus in the game. So a lot of them used different scripts that were like not as complete and didn't have as many features. And overall, I thought that I could narrow down the amount of menus to use basically the same set of scripts. I decided the most optimal way to proceed was to create a base menu class and have a scroll and a regular menu inherit from it, since they could share a lot of the functionality and override the necessary methods to tweak them. Of course, I'm speedrunning past this section because I could, but I don't think anyone wants to hear me talk about menus for half an hour. And all you need to know is that using a base menu option class and Godot's excellent signal system, I was able to have a modular system where now each menu in the game is intuitive as it behaves and controls in the exact same way. They all use one of two menu scripts, which meant reworking all menus, testing they function correctly, and solving many bugs along the way. Gee, after all that, I sure do hope that next task isn't an unsurmountable Goliath, bloated and complex due to the nature of RPG games. So I added emotions to the dialogues, using arroba at the beginning and writing an emotion later looks for the portrait of the character with that emotion. So that wasn't too bad. I mean, it was kind of scary modifying the code of my dialogue plugin. For anyone interested, it's a super robust and free dialogue manager plugin for Godot by Nathan Holt, with tutorials and extensive documentation by the legend himself. But overall it was pretty easy. I kinda got deep into the code and copied how Nathan handles special commands in the dialogue to detect that any text followed by arroba indicates that emotion that the character has when speaking. Then the code looks for a portrait with the nomenclature character name _ emotion. Sure, I'm feeling powerful. What do you got for me, game? I can do anything. What comes next? I don't feel very safe. Some games are lucky. Safe, which is the current level, sure. List of items in my inventory, okay. Yeah, amount of money, okay, that's easy, just an integer variable. I have to save a casting of actors, level ups, stats for every character, items for every character. One item can appear in multiple inventories at the same time. How do you even do that? I have to save the level, like the whole fucking scene, the level, the stats of every unit, their items, how much durability those items have left, which is the state machine of every entity in the match. This titanic, gargantuan task would not have been possible without Thoth Serializer. An extremely well-built save system plugin by C64 Cosmin that allows you to add serializable nodes to any node and save its transform, its children, and any variable the parent node holds. However, back when I was editing Nathan Holt's dialogue manager, I had to peep a bit into the plugin to add some functionality. But with C64 Cosmin's save system, I'd have to break it apart. I had to go deep. In Godot, I use dictionaries a lot. They are a godsend, extremely useful. They are like the third coming of Jesus, basically. They allow you to group information under one single variable, and there's a lot of situations where this is useful. For example, to save all the stats of a character without them being separate variables, modifiers, level ups, stuff like that. However, C64 Cosmin's save system did not feature natively the ability to save dictionaries. It only would allow you to save variables and arrays. Additionally, I wasn't able to save a reference to a node in the scene, nor a reference to a Godot resource in the file system, which is also something I use a lot. I have a lot of different resources because it simply is very useful to initialize my entity class with different presets in my RPG, having different weapons as resources, different characters as resources, different consumable items as resources. Even the conditions to clear a map are resources. So this was at the top of my priority list as well. So the latter one was pretty simple to solve. To save resources, I simply saved the path of the resource and loaded it upon loading the save file. The object reference, however, was much harder, since the way Thoth operated loaded everything from the scene root to the leaves. It would load, instantiate, and initialize nodes with their save data. This means that nodes higher up the tree were completely loaded before nodes lower down the tree even begin to exist, which meant that if a high node referenced a low node, this reference would be null and it would never be able to obtain its value. This is the part where I had to greatly rework the plugin in order to first load every single node and then load their data, and of course there were many bugs and things to change. The final issue I had occurred when loading type-hinted arrays. For those who perhaps come from Unity or Unreal Engine and haven't touched languages like Python, Lua or GTScript, the latter are dynamically typed languages. This means that the type of value isn't explicitly stated when declaring it in a variable. It could be anything and even change during its execution. In Godot, you can force a unique type into a variable, just like you would in C, by type hinting it. This helps with autocompletion suggestion, since Godot knows and is sure of what type this variable is, and therefore the methods or properties it has access to. Despite this, when saving an array, I can't know what the type of this array is. Godot treats it like an array, but not as an array of menu item, which is what I was concerned to save in this specific case. Basically, this meant that when trying to assign to a variable of type array menu item the loaded array, the result would be null, as if I hadn't assigned the array or the types didn't match, which did match, but actually not, since Godot read the loaded array as a generic array and not an array of menu item. I searched and tried and fumbled for hours, and I could not come up with an elegant, scalable solution, so I had to resort to checking one by one which classes the loaded array truly had. To be honest, I felt kinda dumb, cause even though the system could grow into hundreds of if and else if statements if I let it go out of hand in the future, as it stands right now and really for the foreseeable future of the game, it only added up to like 20 lines of code, and I stumble trying to get more complex solutions when this works fine for my game, really. Though if anyone in the comments think they know a solution to this problem, I would be very curious to know, because I deduced it to be simply impossible due to the limitations of the language. Gosh, I've remembered that it's been a while since we've checked on our good friend the Backstage. Now that I think it though, I haven't seen them since I taught them off last devlog. I hope they're not too mad at me. Let's see. Woohoo! The Backstage sure knows how to throw a party. But seriously, I knew I needed some minigames and activities to do with your teammates, and one day in my train commute to work I was like, bet I could program an air hockey minigame on my train ride. Didn't quite pull it off, it was only about half an hour of train ride left, but I did manage to complete it when I got home. It took a bit while longer because I was getting used to the 2D physics in Godot, since I've not used them in a while, my game doesn't really need them. I even drew some sprites, and to be honest I ended up with a pretty goodness and fun air hockey minigame where characters have their own interactions and mid-match remarks depending on how the match is going. Pretty neato. So this brings this devlog to a close. To be honest, there's tons of stuff I skimmed over and could go into more detail if anyone would be interested. I hoped anyway you enjoyed the video. I didn't want to cut down on the entertaining personality, but it did end up much more informative and serious than the previous one, which is a result of me being kind of overworked and tired to write funny puns and skits, but also since I had more stuff to talk about as opposed to last time where it was like, I wrote a lot and made lots of XOs. That was in great part thanks to my collaborators, since you've seen some final art is starting to stroll by. I've got a friend helping me with the game's thousands and thousands of dialogue lines, so I've been able to concentrate on the programming and pull up some interesting stuff. I've been mostly dedicated to making good systems for the game, but hopefully next time you get to see some of the actual playable levels, as we are starting to have those first levels finalized. Lazy Game Dev bidding you farewell, and stay lazy.